and get this started. And we will dive right into it. So 2 classes ago, we did personas, and where we really just kind of broke down who our target audience were. In the last class, we did ideation. We really dived into the solution. How many of you put your links in the forum and got some feedback from your classmates on your ideation boards? Yes? Okay, that's one. Lisa, maybe sort of not.
I put mine in, but I didn't see that I had any, I don't know if I did it right, but I was able to see some others. I saw Sylvia's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You guys please be really helpful in supporting each other. Like I said, we really want to be in a space that we can kind of help each other out. And so even if you've already submitted your ideation boards, please also make it a point to give feedback to each other in your class, so we can continue to refine our ideas and what we can offer our customer base. So today what we're going to dive into is a little bit of scenarios, and then we're going to go into, hopefully we should be able to get into the first round of prototyping. And this is, so notice that design thinking is 5 stages. So it's empathy, define, wait, what did I mess up? Empathy, define, ideate, prototype, and testing, right? Empathy and define, we spent a lot of time on, right? Really understanding who's your customer, what's the problem, what's really, what are their concerns, right? Ideate and prototyping, we're going to spend a little less time on. Because if you've done that first part well, the rest of it falls into place. If you know your customer and their problem, and the more time you spend on understanding your customer and their needs, the easier it is to think of solutions for them, right? And so if you get to ideate and you're really struggling, go back and look at how you did your empathy and define. There might be something missing. If you get to prototype and it's just not falling into piece, go back, look at your ideate, go look at your define, look at your empathy, right? So if the latter stages are challenging, there's something missing from the first few stages. And because of the way it builds on itself, that just means you just keep going back, and don't feel like, okay, well, the class is going on, I need to go on, right? This is at your own pace. The materials we're providing, you store them, these recordings, these classes are recordings, and the recordings are made available for you, so you can kind of go back and forth as you need. In true design thinking form, or in true lean startup format, you would have actually interviewed 100 customers before you got to ideate, right? We cut it short for the purpose of this class, but that doesn't mean your process stopped because we moved on. We introduced you to the concept. We had you do a couple so we can kind of give you feedback so you get the ropes of it, but you keep going. And that's what I said, like when it comes to a lot of this, you're double dutching, right? You're spinning some wheels for your company, and you're learning the next steps as you go, right? That doesn't stop. So if you're kind of trying to fast forward the process, it'll catch up to you because you'll get stuck on the next one. But once you recognize that, feel free to go back to the previous step and fill in those blanks, right? Because that's really how you're going to figure out what's truly the true niches, the gaps that your customers' needs are, and where your solution fits on that continuum. So let's go into today. So we're at the parts persona, ideation, user personas, ideation. From here on out, this is where I call the fun part, because I feel like define and empathy and define are harder, right? Like I don't know anything about my customer, and I hate talking to people personally. So that's just a lot of grunt work for me. Like it's super useful, and it's probably the most important thing, but here's where the creative side of me gets to have some fun. And so today we're gonna, like I said, talk about scenarios. And this is kind of like the same thing with like the personas and ideation, where my ideas and my brain can just run wild, is kind of what excites me more the most in all this. But if it's not tied to a problem, then it's a waste of time, which is why we spend so much time on that front end. So diving right into, let's talk about scenarios. A scenario is a workflow for one or more personas. And it's essentially just putting that persona, that person, into a real life scenario of a real life situation of understanding how they exist and their worldview comes in contact with the solution that you're talking about. So they're minimally capturing in written form that can also be conveyed orally as a storyboard or in a video. A good story, a scenario, begins with motivation and involves a series of steps towards an intent or unintended outcome. So design thinking suggests using scenario mapping, which we'll talk about today, to rapidly prototype our scenarios. And from these scenarios, you can identify pain point of users and opportunities for design. So when we think about our scenarios, you want to kind of think about how to capture the information by using, and we can do this using sticky notes, or you can kind of write it out. And so we're going to do, excuse me. So we're going to use some of these different pieces to tell our story, our user persona story, right? So the steps that your persona takes to complete a task, the specific activities in which your persona engages to complete the step, what is your persona, what your persona is thinking during those steps, and what is your persona saying during the steps, and what are they feeling during the steps. That's the scenario mapping piece, right? And so before we get to mapping, we got to know their story, right? Because seeing a person without knowing their story does them an injustice, right? Because it's like, okay, you exist, but knowing their story allows you to really connect with them and to really understand, like, does your scenario make sense for that person? Imagine you're building a solution for an elderly woman in a remote village, right? But you've envisioned this, digitally advanced solution that requires all these technical skills. And as you realize the story of this user, you realize there's really no realistic way that that user will come in contact with your solution. That's when you think, I might need to reiterate on this solution. It has to be realistic and practical, right? For my user. So when it comes to telling us to your scenario, it's really just storytelling. So this goes back to, I don't know if you guys remember your English days, parts of a story, right? So stories tend to follow this very narrative structure that looks like a pyramid, right? And so Freitag's pyramid shows 5 parts, right? So of the act. So there's the exposition, right? Kind of the something happened, right? Like what kicked it all off? What was the need, right? A rise in action, a climax, a falling action, or final suspense or resolution, a denouncement, a conclusion. Right. So if you think about it, think about all your favorite movies or stories that you've read or any of those, right? They tend to have these pieces. Sometimes, new agey, they'll change it around some of the parts of it, but they tend to have all these pieces, or our stories feel complete, right? Incomplete. And so if you think about it in terms of like this imagery here, you can really think about the pyramid about a guy and his phone that won't work, right? And so this is kind of a goofy example, but it's kind of, his phone doesn't work, and there's some dragon in there. That's the rising action, and then he's at war with this dragon, and he turns into a superhero and defeats this dragon, and then defeat there's this conclusion where he's victorious, right? But these all capture the parts of a story. Now, in knowing how to tell parts of a story, this fits into what we're going to move into later on as the storyboard. So we have the parts of the story, which is just the written explanation of it. Then when we go to our prototyping, we're going to tell it in a picture form, right? Which is some stick figures, right? How do we kind of tell this whole long story in like some short pictures where someone can kind of see, right? Because these are the things that we want to take to our users and test out with them. Can they see themselves, right? Because if you're saying this is the story of the customers that you've been interviewing, that you're designing for, you should be able to talk to some of these customers and show them the story. And they should be like, yeah, that's me, right? And if they don't see themselves in that story, why? You need to make some adjustments, because if your users can't relate to stories about them, then you have missed the mark, right? And so this is kind of another round of interviewing and talking to our customers, right? So we got a problem or scenario from them. And this is essentially, if this was all a continued conversation, right? If this is a continued conversation, then it would look something like this, where your customer is kind of telling you their story, and then you turn back and you're like, I hear you say, and you're giving it to them in picture form. And they should be able to say, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying, or no, these are that and this, or you missed this important piece, or I forgot to mention this other piece, right? And so this is allowing you to kind of really refine your understanding of their story and their problem space, right? And this will feed into your ideation motivation, because there might be pieces to the problem that you didn't recognize because it wasn't mentioned. But now that you contextualize this problem, there are other pieces that are going to play in that we didn't mention before. So when we think about a story, if we kind of look at here, it starts off with a person with a goal of motivation. So if you kind of think about right here, our character, the goal, their setting, these are all the things we captured in our persona, right? We gave that person, that character, a name. We understood their goals. We understood enough about their background, right? We created a fictitious story outline of a person. So we had a really good sense of who we were dealing with, right? So who our users were, including their knowledge base and their skill set. And then from here, you go into their motivation, right? What goals do they want to achieve? What is the task they must do to reach that goal, right? And so that tends to often be kind of some of the triggers to their action, right? Like, I really want to do this and I'm trying to get this done, but there's an incident, there's a conflict, there's a risk, something, a struggle that comes about, right? In me trying to get to that end goal. And so this gives us context of use. How would they encounter your design? Where would they try to use it? When will they try to use it? And what can get in their way? And this is really important because remember early on, I think the first week when we talked about Jim being blind, and we said, well, what are some things we might not know about Jim, right? Or I'm sorry, Jim can't see, or Jim, I'm sorry, not blind. We said Jim couldn't see, and we assumed he was blind, but what if Jim was just sitting in the dark, right? And so like and so in that sense, Jim's situation was very contextualized, right? Because if the issue, he was sitting in the dark, then we don't need to design some convoluted solution. We just need to turn on the light. And so if the situation, the conflict, that is leading to the motivation or the need is only contextualized in certain situations, if it's a problem that only occurs during winter or only occurs during the mornings or once a year, right? We need to understand that because it puts our situation in a very different light. So when it comes to writing a scenario, we use our user personas, which is our targeted definitions of our users, and contents to be analyzed. So what are their different goals and tasks and possibilities and problems, considering the possible paths and points of friction. So this is kind of a user scenario I want us to take a look at. So we'll go quickly. So Peter Haler works for a corporate communication department at Chrysler. He loved it at the beginning, but his job is no longer challenging for him. However, he's scared to reorient because his status and financial security is very important to him. Pete is very organized and can't stand chaos or inconvenience. In his free time, he reads a lot of books. Books help him keep his mind busy, and especially professional literature offers him the challenge he misses at work. The last couple of weeks, Pete has really been into medical books because of his family history. He's especially interested in kidney disease. He's looking for easy to read books for non-professionals that explains different kidney disease, including symptoms, methods of treatment, and possible long-term effect. He doesn't want to spend more than $30. If available, he prefers used books to save money. He visits Amazon to find the right book. Pete is handy with computers, but since his work requires him all day, since working with them all day, he wants to use them as little as possible when he comes home. Convenience is very important for Pete. He knows exactly what he wants and expects to quickly find several options that he can choose from. He does not expect the payment process to be difficult or shipping to take longer than 2 days. Pete likes to read expert statements and short recession from users to find out the book is the right one. Pete used to go to a local book dealer. He enjoys walking through town after work and picking up his purchase. Lately, his friends has recommended Amazon.com to him. His friend was very enthusiastic about the features of Amazon offers, and above all, its convenience. It works. This made Pete curious, and he always wanted to try it. He also sees the advantage of going home directly after work, even if he likes going to the bookstore. Ordering his book from his desk at home is way more convenient. He wants to try and order his next book online. Okay, it seems lengthy, but if we're having a conversation, you realize Pete's story isn't really lengthy. But what we immediately see in his story, well, tell me, I'll ask you guys, so let's make this a little more interactive. What are we seeing in Pete's story? Going back to what we said in terms of parts of the story. or scenario?
He likes reading books, but he wants like a physical copy instead of a digital copy. So his challenge is purchasing books and waiting for them to be delivered.
Okay, but let's take it from the very beginning. What do we know about Pete?
He likes to read.
Okay, but Pete, he likes to read, but he has some other mannerisms, right? He doesn't want to read on the computer because he spends all day on it and he's good on that, right? And he likes to read certain types of books. So he has a very specific genre that he likes to read. And he wants something that challenges him because his job is no longer challenging him, right? So he has a very specific focus in what he likes to read, but also let's look at some of his habits in terms of his online shopping habits, right? So there are some very clear lines there about Pete that we know. What else do we see about Pete and his habits? Anybody?
Well, beyond what you've said, like he doesn't want to be on his computer anymore. He doesn't want to spend a whole lot of money on the books, but he does enjoy his walk to get books. And I think because, like Sylvia said, he wants a paper book, he wants to see which ones are good, maybe recommendations. So he's willing to check out Amazon because of expert statements and short, whatever that word, rescission from other users. So his habits, he's willing to change his habits a little bit. That's good.
Yeah, so that's very interesting, right? And he also, it's not just any books. He likes used books because he used to resell books from his local dealer. So he wants that flexibility in terms, so he doesn't want to spend a lot of money. He's okay with the books being used. And so we start to see in a short time frame here, right? We see his issue, right? We kind of see the beginning, right? Going back to I'll take it here, right? What is his goal? What is his motivation? So Pete wants to get access to used books at a low rate. Like he wants physical books. He wants that convenience of getting them quickly. He doesn't want the shopping process to be difficult. He wants, he wants access to books that he like, that are challenging him, right? And what is his struggle? Well, right now, he went to his online, like his struggle isn't always what we think of a struggle. It's not like the world was falling apart. He couldn't get access to the books. He was getting access, kind of walking to a local dealer, but there are some opportunities there. So his struggles were more of opportunities, right? Where, okay, I'm getting my books this way, but if there's an opportunity that I can get my books faster, easier, and quick, and more efficiently, then he was definitely open to that, right?
And so possibly a broader field of exposure.
It gave him a broader range of books that could challenge him, especially because he was looking for something very specific. He was looking for books about kidney disease, right? And so he had a very specific niche of books that he was looking for, and this gave him that access to that broader range of information, right? And so with the crisis can almost be seen, well, like, I have a method that gives me access to stuff that's working, but this looks like it's going to give me access to even more and in a convenient manner, then it might be worth a try, right? He tries it, he likes it, he changes his habit, Pete lives happily ever after, right? Questions about Pete's journey? All right, so we're going to create a user scenario, but we're going to do it in a fun way. We're going to try to be a little engaging. So I want us to create a user scenario together. So here's a few things to remember. So in your user scenario, we want to know who the user is, the situation that drives the user to seek the product, a specific task or goal that user has, information regarding the user's income or spending, the path to completion of the task, and points of friction or stress in daily life or in the user experience. So I don't know if you guys ever played, like, it's an icebreaker game sometimes called Once Upon a Time, or you'll hear it as or there's different names for it. But essentially, this is going to be a game of collaborative storytelling. So basically what we're going to do, we can do it all as one. What we're going to do is we're going to tell a story, but everyone tells one line of the story, and we're just going to add on and we're going to make a story together. But the catch is we have to collectively make sure our story reflects all these pieces. Who the user is, the situation that drives the user to seek the product, the task or goal the user has, information regarding the user's income and spending, the path to completion of a task, and points of friction in the daily life in the user experience. And so each person is only allowed to say one sentence and must continue the story. So the first player begins with once upon a time and completes the sentence. And then the next person in line must continue the story and have it make sense. The process continues until it reaches the last person. And so essentially, like I said, this is collaborative storytelling. So I will let Katie pick a topic. I'm putting you on the spot, Katie. I'm gonna let you pick a topic. And then I'm going to, y'all gonna have to think fast on your feet because I'm just gonna call the names as they appear. I would say as they appear on my screen, but if some of you turn on your things, it goes wonky. So I'm just gonna do it how it appears in the chat list. Yeah, that works. So once Katie gives the topic, the next.
You want me to start out with Once Upon a Time? There was a, and.
Yes, but situate the topic so we know the, well, yeah, just start off with your Once Upon a Time, yeah, and go from there.
Okay. Once upon a time in a busy city, there was a bicycle delivery person. I don't know what to call him.
Okay.
In the bar low, you guys. You can feel free.
All right, Lisa.
Named Sam, who doesn't want to ride his doesn't want to ride his bike anymore.
Okay. Chris.
He's looking for an alternative job that makes better money.
Okay. Sylvia.
His income is, he makes substantial income, but he spends less.
Okay. Ines.
However, he still wants to get the same amount of exercise.
Okay. Barsha.
So he's looking for a way to get more exercise, but also find a new stream of income.
Okay. Dale, bring it on.
So instead, he runs a newspaper company by running to each house on the block.
Awesome, guys. I love y'all creativity on the spot. So we were able to hit all of our parameters, who he was, the situation that drove him to seek out a product, a specific task or goal, information regarding users' income, the path to completion of tasks, and the points of friction in the daily life. Anybody have questions on that? That was kind of funky, I know, but you guys did a great job of kind of impromptu thinking there.
I wrote it down if you want it.
Well, I hope that just kind of got your creative juice going, because what we're going to do now, and let me see how many people we're going to do. I think it's essentially 6. Yeah. So we're going to do 2 breakout rooms. JB, if you can help me out and do 2 breakout rooms of 3. We're going to create our user scenarios for our target audience. And so essentially, we're going to create short scenarios that would make sense for your users. You can definitely add more to this after this time. Because I just want to make sure you guys get going on this and we jump to another piece that's also critical. So I want you to kind of think about all the different pieces, that background, the motivation, the task, context of use, the environment, and some of the challenges, right? And so I want you to create your user scenarios, and we're going to do this in our breakout rooms so that we can also share our scenarios briefly. So just make sure you're kind of covering those bases. Again, you'll have time to flesh it out before you have to, turn it in, but I do want you to create a version of it that makes sense for, and if you have multiple users, you can, again, after class, work on, a scenario for each of those users, but pick one user group and create a scenario for them, right? And tell their story. But one thing when we were just doing our collaborative storytelling that we didn't do is we didn't really say how they came to our product, right? And so remember at the beginning, I kept pushing you guys like, no, I don't want to hear about your solutions. No, tell me about your product. This is where we are now. We are finally at that point. So your user got something going on, they got a situation, they got a need, or something has happened, and now they have a problem or a need. They're trying to make some decisions. Somehow in the world, the universe, the friend, the TV, somebody has let them know that there's a solution, your solution that exists. How do they come to your solution? How do they start to interact with your solution, right? And so like in the Pete example, right? We learned about Pete, all the stuff Pete had going on. Pete's friend told him, hey, try Amazon.com. Pete tried Amazon.com, liked it because it met his need in these very specific ways. We want to see that in your stories, right? So in your scenarios, we want to see that process where we're kind of coming to see not just the user background. We want to see how that user goes through their journey to get to the point that they come in contact with your product or service. Questions?
I have a question. The scenario I get, but I'm stuck a little that I'm like a service.
Yeah.
Is that different? Am I missing something?
No, people should come to a service. Think about, I'll give you a popular service. We talked about before, shared car service, right? What is the situation? And we did the example where someone needed access to a car, but they didn't want it all the time. They didn't have
Minimal,
yeah, that was a service, right? That they came, they explained the use, the need. Hey, someone said, hey, or maybe they saw a commercial or whatever, like, hey, this service exists, you should try it. And then they started to use that service and it met their needs. Yep. So same process, regardless if it's a product or service. Questions?
Good. Everybody good?
All right. So we're going to get ready, go into our breakout rooms. Like I said, the first few minutes of your breakout rooms is just you writing your story out, typing it out. If you got to do bullet points initially, kind of get down as much as you can. So get some speed writing and think about it like, at this stage, especially when it's your first pass at it, think about it like from the perspective of how kids tell story. They give you a whole lot of detail. And then that one time, and they said, and they like, you want that kind of level of detail with your story. Like, give me all the little pieces, because when it comes time to put this in the picture form, you're going to need and appreciate those details, right? And so you want to be like that 6-year-old telling you about that, that 5-minute incident on the playground, but it's somehow turned into an hour-long story, right? Like, you want that kind of detail. All right. All right, so we're going to do our 2 breakout rooms. And again, spend some time writing. You have a question, you can ask someone in your room. That's kind of why we do this. And then we'll hop around if you guys have questions, but I really want you to just kind of get in there, and then we'll share in the rooms before we regroup. All right, Katie, we ready for our breakout rooms?
Wanda, just so everyone knows the like approximately how much time they have to share, and how much time they're going to be working on things. What's the time breakdown? Just
Yeah,
so-
that's a good question. So we can get to the next part. Are we going to be in our breakout rooms for a total of about 15 minutes? So take about 10 minutes to write and a minute a piece to kind of do your sharing. So this isn't a deep dive. Like, you should kind of just be able to do a quick share or if you're stuck, you can ask a question like, okay, I wrote this part out, but I'm not sure how to make the transition from this part of the story to the other. So it's just kind of really some support. So we'll go for roughly about 15 minutes and see how you guys are doing, if we need to kind of end sooner or add a few more minutes, but I don't want to go too long because we have to get to the next piece.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so should I go ahead and open the rooms?
Yes, please.
All right, here we go. Wonder which room would you like me in?
Pick your vice. Oh, hold on. I should.
You're muted.
There you go. How was that? Made some good progress? All right, so stories are part of a bigger picture. I mean, our scenarios. I keep saying stories because essentially they are scenario, but they are a part of the story of just one of our customers and their journeys. And depending the level of complexity with your product or service, your customer can have various journeys, various scenarios, right? Like it might be a part 1 to their story and a part 2, right? In terms of kind of what brings them there. But beginning to understand your customer in context of their life, right? And some of the things we talked about, like, coming up with their background can be a little sketchy. I don't really know that much about them, but I can guess from the things that I heard people say, the research, what I know about them, and people typically with that background and some of the things I can fill in. And it's okay to take an educated guess, but what I want you to do is take these stories and you ask your target audience, like, does this sound like you? And this stuff, you don't have to meet with people. You can send it out to some of the people you interviewed or people that fall in that demographic and be like, can you relate to this story, right? And that kind of gives you some feedback, right? But one thing that we do with our scenarios, in addition to getting user feedback, is we create what's considered customer journey maps. And so our customer journey maps allows us to take our stories and break them down into pieces to understand the journey of our customer, right? So it's the story, but now contextualized into what is our customer doing, feeling, how do they feel about it? Are they happy? Are they sad? I apologize if this is small. I always struggle with making these things bigger. Can you guys see this okay? Yes? It's not so much. Okay, I feel you. I'm gonna try.
I don't have on my glasses. It's okay. I'll put on my glasses.
Okay. All right. I'll read out to you a little bit. So this customer journey map is about shopping for a new car. So Eric is an emotional car buyer. He purchased based on aesthetics and status. Eric recently moved to the area. He's shopping for a car that is fun to drive and dependable enough for everyday commute. His expectations, the ability to compare cars, their breakdowns, good for photography with a close-up, inside and out video, overview of a car with demonstration. So essentially with a customer journey map, you start with the scenario that we did, and then you break down their stories, right? So then you can, you go through, the steps of their stories, because stories happen in stages, just like when we showed the beginning, the middle, the end, the climax, the conclusion. What are those steps, right? How in those steps do they come to your product or service, and what is happening to them? So this one starts off with week 1, his consideration stage, right? Where he sees a TV commercial for yourcarnext.net, which helps people shop for vehicles. He sees the ad on Facebook and he's thinking to himself, wow, that website looks great for car shopping. Remember, he's very Eric is very much like, he likes aesthetics. So it looks good on the site. It looks good to him. The website, but then he's disappointed because the website looked very different from the commercial, right? All these things are like kind of his first round of introduction to this, what he's considering. 2 months later, he explores the sites at all vehicles on his budget. He creates accounts and save favorite cars, wish list, download the mobile app while at his office, right? Again, he gets excited. I like to save cars and list is automatically made. That's awesome. He likes those features. He's what the features he doesn't like. He's disappointed at the quality of listing and very few photos because he likes the pictures, right? And he feels like the mobile app is missing some features, right? And you kind of go through, and we won't kind of for sake of time go through his whole journey, but we kind of see where he's introduced to this concept. We see some his feelings along the way, and we see the stages. And I want you to think about this because this is really important for you to think about what is happening with your user and what is happening at the different stages for your user, right? Because the more you can envision like what your user is kind of going through in these different steps, the easier it is for you to think of how to speak to that user as you start to create your solutions. So think about a good solution isn't just about functionality. It isn't just about the benefits, but it's about meeting your user where they are and what they need. I'll give you an example. There was an actual local company, it was an attorney, and we were in like some kind of entrepreneurship debriefing session, and they were talking about billboards that they were going to pull up. And they were a probate attorney. And I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with probate attorneys, but they're the ones that often handle the estates of loved ones after they've passed, etc. And so they were talking about putting up billboards that said something like, we represent deadpeople.com or something like that. Catchy, kind of funny, you know, kind of cool. So they thought. But during this debriefing, it's like, there were several concerns of, I'm pretty sure the customers that are coming to you at this time are not in a joking kind of state of mind. When you're going to a probate attorney, I don't catch a joke right now. This is just, and that is very important, right? Understanding the state of mind of that customer when they're coming to your product or service is very important, because that customer could very well need your service, but I'm going to see that billboard, and in my state of distress, I'm going to think, you don't take this seriously, right? I just lost someone very important to me, and you're not taking it seriously. I'm not going to use your business, right? You might be the greatest person in town, but I will not use your business. And so you want to be able to think about all the things that are happening around your customer that brings them to your product or service, right? And be mindful of that, because that's going to impact how you relate to them, the messaging you put in, right? You know, do you need to be empathetic? Do you need to be excited, right? What are the, like, if you're targeting a mom, a single mom of busy kids, your message can't be convoluted with a whole lot of words, right? It needs to be to the point, short, and bullet points, right? Like, so you got to kind of think about all those things that are happening when your customer is coming to you, their expectations. And so we can kind of see here on Eric's process. Let's look at one more. So this is an online shopping customer. Sorry, Ines, this is even smaller. Stages of the journey always starts off with the motivation, right? What's wrong, what they need, what's broken, what's right? What is that motivation? So this motivation, this customer wants to buy a Christmas gift for a friend, right? That's the activity of what they want to do. So the stage of their journey is their motivation, the activity. They want to buy a gift for a friend. They're happy, right? They feel very happy that, you know, I want to buy something for my friend. It makes me feel good, right? Their experiences, excited to give a friend, a surprise to a friend, customer expectation, easy to obtain discount news, right? Then the search for the website is kind of their next step in the journey. They search products, keywords or search engines, and, you know, how are they feeling? They're, you know, overall satisfied. You know, they're starting their search, they're overall satisfied, happy to see so many options, confusing about how to choose, more user-friendly search engines, right? So their experience is, you know, they're happy to see the options, but they don't like that it's so complicated. So, but they're still like, oh, you know, overall they're satisfied, but they're seeing where the process could be improved, right? And that is clear by their expectation. Like, I want this to be a little bit easier, right? So then, as they're searching, they click the first ad or results, and now they're annoyed, right? So in clicking the first ad, they're annoyed at the uselessness of the information, right? Because their expectation is to allow to hide unnecessary ads. Like, why are you even showing me this? Like, this has nothing to do why I'm here, right? And so they want to be a way, like, I want to search this site and look for the things I'm looking for, but not have to deal with useless ads. Right. So then they is again still on their searching journey, check online again and go to the first original result. So the ads annoy them, but the results bring them back to overall satisfied. When they're overall satisfied because they're happy with how informative the website is, not sure about how to find the best prices. So it's like, I'm satisfied, but I'm not very happy because there's some confusion, because their expectation is they want clear, innovative website design. And so now they're at the next stage. They've done their searching, and so now they're browsing the site. So they've gone through a couple different sites. They're browsing the site. They check out ongoing deals and hot sale products. So remember, their original expectation was easily to obtain discount news. And so they click on the first site, and it got the deals, the sales, and they are surprised to see lots of discounts, right? The expectation is there are going to be great discounts during the holidays, but it surpassed their expectation. They evaluate the product, open a product page to check product details, and now they're frustrated because about the review from other customers, right? They want higher quality, right? More about the product pages to compare info. They're pleased at the usage design, so they are overall satisfied. Sad to see the out of stock prices, and they want faster supply chain, right? Process to pay a preferred product, contact online help. So when you are doing something like this, I want you to first think about the stages of the journey, right? What is their motivation? What are the things they actually have to do? How do they go through the whole process? And even though I kind of read these vertical, when you're working on these, you're working on them horizontally. So you think about the stage, then you think about the activities. They want to buy a Christmas gift. They search the products. They click on the first ad. They click online again to get the first result. So you want to think about all those steps. Then you want to think about how are they feeling about those steps, right? So you want to think about these very much row by row, right? What are they doing? How are they feeling? And why are they feeling that way? They're feeling that way because this is their experience and this is their expectation, right? And you want to be able to identify that with every stage of the journey, right? And it's up to you to decide how many stages that they go through, but you want to really think about that customer journey, right? That map of their journey is really important because okay, if this is my entire customer journey, here is why my product or service is useful for them. Here are the things that I need to make sure I'm pointing out to them that these pains or gains is what I'm supplying. And I can directly connect the pains or gains they're getting from me and my product and service to the pains and gains that they were experiencing or the expectations that they came in knowing. For the things you don't know and you're not sure, these are opportunities to do some more discovery with your customers, right? So again, these are based off of your scenarios. So you're taking your scenario and you're breaking it down to these different stages and the activities that they're doing, right? And as you learn, so take your scenario, you ask a couple people, is this them? Is this not them? Then you break it down and you do your customer map. And then you see, man, I'm not sure on this part. Ask a couple more people. Hey, look at this scenario. And like right here, like what would you do here? How do you make the decision that got you here? This is really about getting in your customer's head. And I know it sounds like a lot, but the more we know about our customers, the easier it is to build solutions for them. And this is another one I won't go through because it's a little hard to read, but it's very much the same process. The stages are defined differently, but it's always going to be some like exploration stage, motivation stage, or something that brings them into that pipeline. So they visit a site, or they break a phone, or whatever it is that happens in their life that makes them realize they're seeking that, they have a problem. And then you take them on that journey in terms of discovery. So what we're going to do is we won't do this now because, like I said, for the sake of time, this is going to be one of your homework assignments, is that I want you in Miro to create a customer journey map. So let me exit out of here so I can show you that, that template, and I'm going to.
So I just want to say really quickly that when I started my business and was like just thinking about what I was going to do, what kind of services, I did a lot of these exercises and I wrote like a quote that I wanted my customer to say about me. And no joke, a year later, a customer basically said that exact thing to me. And I was like, hang on. And I pulled out the worksheet and it was like, and I read it to her and she was like, that's crazy. And so it really does help you set a direction and an intention. And these are really important things to do. So I just wanted to share that little anecdote with everyone.
I agree with Katie. As you get started in running your businesses, there's going to be a lot of moving parts and you're going to have so many highs and lows. You're going to forget, like, and especially as you start running towards a target, you're going to shift to the next goal. And then it can reach some frustrations to realize that if you haven't pointed out, hey, this is where I wanted to do, and I actually reached that goal, like pat yourself on the back when you meet these milestones, and you can only recognize that, or you have an easier time, I shall say, recognizing them if you have them clearly defined, right? Like if you say my first milestone is that people can say this about my service or product, or people will have this experience with my service or product. As you are moving on to adding new features and benefits, and you're trying to think of the next iteration, you'll see like, oh my gosh, I hit that first milestone. People are, seeing this and saying this or benefiting in these particular ways, right? And so you want to be able to recognize that. Or if they're not, if something has changed, you want to be able to recognize that too, right? You don't want you don't want your business to take you on a ride. You want to be in full control of your journey, all the way through your process. Let me share my screen. Questions so far?
Clicking on the link, so we're at a customer journey map template.
Yep, I'm pulling that up as soon as my
Okay,
computer
let's do
decides
that.
to do that. There we go. And like I said, we won't work on it now for the sake of time. We need to cover some other things before we wrap up. But I did want you guys to have this. And so this is very much, this template covers very much the same things that we saw in the example, right? What's your stage one? Kind of what gets them into this process. Your stage two, you can add on stages, right? So this is just this starts off with 3 stages, add on stages as much as you want. You can change up these different processes, but I really want you to kind of think about, what is it that they have to do? What is the actions they're taking, right? What are the touch points, right? Like what part of your product or service are they actually interacting with? And what are their thoughts, right? Or not just your product or service that they're your product or service that they're interaction, what are their thoughts, right? So stage one, they're not even coming in contact with your product or service, there'll be nothing in this touch point, and that's okay. Because if stage one is more of their journey in terms of the problem space that they're experiencing, right? And so you're telling me like, okay, at stage one, these are the things that they're struggling with or facing, and here's their thoughts and their feelings about it. Here's the different opportunities, or if you want to change it to like the other example that talked about, their expectations, opportunities, whichever, you can change these titles to be what you need them to be. But I want you to go on that, show me that customer journey, right? So break down your scenario, show me your journey for your customer and what are they doing? How are they feeling? And why? What are those expectations that they're kind of having along the way? And that is going to really let us know kind of where are the opportunities, where are the places that your product or service is really meeting a pain point or providing a gain for them. Go ahead, Lisa.
Linda, what is this process ownership? I mean, like, what does that even mean? Like you say, do we not need that? But what does that mean?
Yeah, so who is in the lead on this? And that is, it really just depends on the style of your business. Like sometimes there's things that happen in stages that have nothing to do with your customer or you, like if there's a third party involved, okay, right? It's like that. And so that is an opportunity to capture that. But again, if that's not a row you need, you can definitely replace that with something else. And so
I don't think I would, right?
Okay,
I mean, that's
fine.
what I don't.
That's fine. You could just remove it and you can add in the pieces that were on the slide that kind of talked about one of the examples that talked about their experience, right? Their experience versus their expectations. So their expectations or our experiences or opportunities, you can kind of define those. These templates are just to kind of get your thoughts thinking. So you're not sitting here with a blank slate trying to figure out how to plug it in, but they are as flexible as you need them to be. So definitely use that.
Sometimes with journey mapping, for me, when like they get into the business, like the portion of it where they're interacting with my business or the business that the journey map is about, it helps to, like, obviously you want to make them happy and you want to find those touch points where you can make them happy. But one of the things that's helpful for me is to find the touch points that might make them upset and angry. Like if they have to, like, let's say it's a car wash and they go and they have to wait in a really long line, and then they get up to it and they realize that the code had to be on their receipt, but they threw their receipt away and there's no way to call somebody on the little caller. And so like all these things are touch points that you could fix or factor into your business. But sometimes it helps for me to take it from the negative and then spin it to a positive.
Thank you, Katie. And I just want to point out some just logistical things in terms of using this template. It has a lot of flexibility. So if you're kind of writing in and you realize, wait, there's another stage or step that's missing, you can add in a step pretty easily and make it into a whole nother, and you can kind of add in the respective pieces wherever, and you can also move these around. So as you're creating, you're not limited in terms of the flexibility of actually building it in, because sometimes you think it through and it's like, wait, there's something missing, right? Adjust and modify accordingly. So you have that flexibility. All righty. Questions on journey mapping?
Do we have enough time to like fill one out for an example, or I'm just having a little.
So I'm gonna let you guys tackle this one on your own, and just because of, like I said, we're on a bit of a time crunch to get through some additional information because of we won't have class on Monday. But if you get stuck, please reach out, and we'll definitely here to support you. So we really want you to kind of get into thinking through these things. But this should, like I said, build from your scenario, but just take a stab at it. And when we regroup on Wednesday, we can definitely discuss it some more if you feel like you can't get through it, or shoot Katie a message at any time. And she will definitely provide you support, or she can meet with you accordingly. Like I said, unfortunately, we won't get a chance to kind of spend much time in it in class today. But I do definitely want you guys to kind of dive in it and do your best. And if you have challenges, let us know. Okay. All righty. So the next piece that we're going to get into, so remember I showed that first slide that talked about, not first slide, but it was one of the slides that talked about the pieces of kind of telling our user stories. So this was kind of like this line up here that told the story. The next thing we're going to go into is taking that same story and telling it in picture form. Because sometimes, like, just let's being realistic. And so I'm sorry, we are now entering the prototyping stage, right? And so persona, scenarios, and journey mapping, they plug in different places. They are definitely part of Ideate, but they're kind of the crossroads of Ideate to prototype. And so they kind of help you really think about, or actually between define, ideate, and prototype, right? Because it's really just helping you understand that user and making them real and personal. But I want us to jump into prototype. Prototyping is a fourth step in our design thinking process, and prototypes are built so that designers can think about their solutions in a different way, and more of a tangible product than an abstract idea, as well as to fail quickly and cheaply and less time and money to invest in an idea and turns out to be a bad one. And so prototyping allows us to really start to make our solutions tangible and make them real on various levels to really understand how they fit the needs of our user in a practical sense. So they slow us down to speed us up. By taking the time to do a prototype, our ideas, we avoid costly mistakes such as becoming too complex too early and sticking with the weak idea for too long. So when you think about prototypes, there are two types of prototypes. There's low fidelity prototype, which is storyboarding, which is what we're going to talk about today, sketching, cards, a Wizard of Oz, and there's high fidelity prototype. So low fidelity prototype involves the use of basic models or examples. So you think of your stick figures, basically it can be incomplete, right? You don't want too much in your low fidelity prototype because you don't want people getting lost in the details, right? Your low fidelity prototype should be the bare bones of your idea, right? Of getting from step one to I got a problem to step two, your solution, to the final step of your solution is solving my problem, and getting people to understand that process and how realistic is that process for them, right? And so really being able to capture that and utilize as few features that will be available in the final design, because you don't want the user getting caught up in colors and placements when it's really about the functionality that we are trying to get a grip on. And are we right? Are we hitting the mark at this stage, right? And so using materials not intended for the finished product. So low fidelity prototypes or sketches, storyboards, you can use wood, you can use paper, you can use plastic, right? There's a whole lot of ways you can do. And high fidelity prototypes look closer to the finished product, right? And so think wireframes. So the pros and cons, low fidelity prototypes are quick, they're inexpensive, easy and to change, disposable, right? If people don't like it, just scratch it out, start a new one, right? And you can do several different iterations, right? And this is really a way of kind of getting that feedback without you ever having to build anything, wasting a lot of time or energy, but you're really kind of getting in the user's mind. Gain overall view of the product. It's available to all and encourages foster design. The cons are is a lack of realism, may not be appropriate for all users and all products and services that we're designing. So it removes the control from the user, but it's really allowing, again, it's our quick and dirty way. So there's a couple of guidelines when we think about prototyping. Basically, you just start building. You design thinking has a bias towards action. So it's important to remember that prototypes are supposed to be quick and easy. Test of the design solutions, right? You want to kind of think through not spending too much time, but it's all about speed, right? Doing something like, if you're in a conversation over dinner and you had the impromptu say, okay, so here's the scenario, right? Stick figure walks in, falls, trips, breaks his ankle, right? And in 10 seconds, can you show that story in a couple of images where someone can get it, right? Visually. And so you build with the user in mind and you test a prototype against your expected user's behavior and user needs. And so if you, not we all, but a lot of people saw Lion King. And so you try to think of the prototype of a storyboard of a Lion King, right? So you have Mufasa, right? Bad guy, you know what I'm saying? And then you have Puma, you know what I'm saying? I'm sorry, Mufasa wasn't the bad guy, right? That was Scar. Yes, sorry. Mufasa, good dude. Everyone loves him. All hail Mufasa. He's amazing. Ooh, bad guy. You're not Mufasa. Must I forever remind you of this? Oh, bandits. Oh, I smell revenge. And right, so you can kind of tell the story in these pictures. Right? I did a horrible job because I honestly didn't remember the pieces right now. But if you've seen Lion King, you can get the gist of it by looking at these pictures. So pictures are worth 1,000 words, right? And so when we just wrote out a scenario, some of you is a couple of paragraphs, and if you actually complete your scenario, it might be a couple of pages. But how do you take those pages and you turn those into a couple of pictures, right? Because people can read a lot into those pictures, right? So it might take you a couple of sentences to explain that someone is sad. You draw, a circle with a smile, with a frowny face, and I got it, right? And so the images can speak more powerfully than just words by adding extra layers of meaning. Right, so you want to be memorable. Stories are 22 times more memorable than plain facts, right? And empathy. It's possible to tell a story that everyone can see and relate to. We often empathize with characters who have real life challenges similar to our own, right? And so engagement, right? Stories capture attention. People are hardwired to respond to stories. Our innate sense of curiosity draws us in, and we engage more when we can sense a meaningful achievement about to be had, right? So when we look at stories, we're looking for that. We're looking for that conflict, that climax, and some resolution. Like, you know, a lot of people complain about the movies that end on a cliffhanger. Like, wait, no, you can't leave me hanging there. I need to know that there's a resolution, even if it's not a happy one. I need to know that there's something that is happening, right? And so we want to be able to see these parts kind of come alive in our imagery. So stories are based on our scenarios. They use user scenarios, and each step in a story is visually, each step in a scenario represents visually in sequence. Each visual has a corresponding caption, right? And you shouldn't have to write a paragraph, right? It should be picture, couple of words, picture, couple of words, right? Or sometimes it could just be picture and people can figure it out, right? But it should be a very quick, where you could be literally standing in line to someone in a grocery store, hold up your storyboard, and while they're waiting on a cashier, they should be able to like iterate through it really quickly and get it, right? Visualizations can explain a scenario better than words, and it has no language barrier. Visualizations create more engagement and curiosity in humans to make understanding of what happens next and what's going on happen. So with storyboards, we want to describe how we think we're going to improve the customer's life and answer the pivotal question: is our proposition really better at delivering on this problem than their current alternative? And remember, I said early on, regardless of the solution, the product or service that you're providing, even if you are the first of its kind, right? That user has another way of getting that problem resolved, right? In some capacity. Remember, I gave you my example of I refused to buy gloves because socks on my hands was perfectly fine for me. That was my alternative solution, right? To some people, it sounds, you know, insane, but for me, it was easy. I didn't have to worry about it because I always had socks, right? And so there's always an alternative that your user is using to solve that problem. If it's a true problem for them, they've come up with an alternative. So the question is, why you? Why your product? Why your service? How is this better in meeting this problem or need for me than whatever I'm doing right now, right? And that should be very clear in your storyboards, right? And whatever you do in terms of telling me that background, that story, that climax, this should be the crystal clear message that is coming across, right? Whatever you're doing is better than whatever I got going on right now because, right? And so you want to kind of think about, and we can kind of, and this is kind of a very funky example where this is, again, a storyboard. It doesn't have to be pretty. It just has to tell the story. So fruits and vegetables, Jen makes her weekly stop at the grocery store. She checks out pics on her receipt. You know what I mean? Oh, it goes down here. The pics on the receipts not adding up. She loads her groceries. Oh, this thing is in the way. She loads her groceries, and I can't see because I have a pop-up. Okay. She loads her groceries in the for the car. It takes out a smartphone and takes a pic of the receipt when fresh, right? And so again, this is very much a storyboard, right? It's kind of the picture that they drew, a short description, and actually your description doesn't even have to be this long, right? It really just depends on your interface and how much you think is needed to explain. Unfortunately, Jen doesn't get around to eating her spinach. She quickly opens her app and deletes spinach so she can track her food waste. Here, she can see how much money she has lost as a result of throwing food away. Jen can track her weekly consumption versus waste and improve her habits accordingly. So we can see quickly, what is this, what is, going back to our question, right? With that example that we just looked at, what is the proposition and why is it better to whatever Jen already has going on? What is this storyboard proposing? What is the product or service that's being proposed here?
It's an app that like scans your receipt and like adds up your spending. And so Jen is using it for her food spending.
Okay. Okay. And what else does the app tell us? It's not just her spending, but she can also tell us what?
What she's wasting, losing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it tells us not just what she's buying, but also she can also track on there, like, I buy spinach every week, and every week I throw away an unopened bag of spinach, right? And I'm sitting here wondering, like, okay, I just need to either stop buying spinach or find another way to consume it, right? And so it's giving her some real-time information that Jen is very interested in knowing, right? And so this, you can see immediately how she can apply an app like this, right? And this, again, this doesn't require a whole lot of reading. We were able to understand this app. And then if I was Jen or someone like Jen, I'd be like, oh, this is cool. I also wish it included, right? If the creator of this showed me to this, like, hey, check out this storyboard. Like, what are your thoughts? Do you see yourself? Can you relate to this? Like, yes, I do that all the time. I can't tell you how many unopened bags of vegetables I throw out every week. And I would love to know, like, what adjustments do I need to make to stop doing that? Go ahead, Lisa.
I would, and what recipes can I use with some of these things, right? I see.
Right. So that was, if someone was showing that to me, I'd be like, man, this is great. But if they could also tell me like what recipes to include, like that would be a great feature I would want to see on this. Because then instead of me just wasting the spinach, if I know a quick and dirty recipe or quick and dirty use, like, hey, got that leftover spinach that you bought last week, try this before it goes bad, right? And so that I feel like would be a great feedback to whoever was creating this app of things as a user that I would like to see. And so one of the things that we do, so this is another storyboard example. We won't go in through the full, so basically we can step through this the example before and after scenario. And so there's 3 people that there's Helen, Frank, and Chris. And so this is about a job posting. So Helen says, it says here, Linux system admin. He replies, yup, and I really want a job. He comes back, HR, and your resume says, Linux. Yes, and I'm super busy. You're hired. Please start ASAP. Hey, what's the IP, that new web address? Let's see, type. Oh, sorry, it doesn't have one. You scored 10% on your, so that was the before, right? That was her hiring process before, where she kept interviewing people that, said they wanted the job, like, hey, I'm hiring for this position. I really want this job. They really want this job. But, they're not actually as qualified as they're presenting to be, right? And that is kind of frustrating for her, right? So now the after is after they've come in contact with this solution, right? And so now when she's, Helen is hiring, she can use this service, right? Where she can actually test the interviewee's ability to score their knowledge in this space. So you score 10% on your Linux screener quiz. We need someone with a little bit more experience, right? And then, get another person. So after several candidates later, HR, your resume says that Linux. Yep, great. You're hired, please start. Here's what the server, web server needs. So she's able to test and find someone with more experience, and he's actually a good fit and can actually do the job, right? So that's another way of showing the storyboard, kind of like if you were to showing this to someone in Helen's position, like I'm constantly trying to hire and I'm getting people who are not qualified, right? Like, does this sound like your journey, right? And then like, here's the solution I'm proposing. Like, do you see something like this kind of helping you with your journey, right? And what do you see that's missing from this, right? And this is kind of some ways that we can create storyboards that is showing that before, that after, that climax, the problem, all the things that we talked about, right, on that journey. So when you think about a storyboard, the storyboard, just like our scenarios, has structure. So you want to think about the visual representation of the stories. They have to be logical, understandable, and convincing, right? So the specific persona involved in your story, always, again, we're building, right? So our personas are central characters in all of our stories. Varsha, you have a question?
Yes. So like the user scenarios we just made, like I know they were super complicated and we had to be super detailed. And like for the storyboard, it seems that it's like a much more simple scenario. So like are we just kind of like honing in on like a particular situation where someone would need our product, or
Oftentimes your storyboard are just as complicated as, or just on the same level of complexity as your scenario, but in pictures, that complexity comes out differently, right? So it's the same thing of, remember, like we talked about, if you've ever read a book that's like 1,000 pages, but it can turn into like a 30-minute movie, right? Because a lot of the things that you have to be very clear in detail to describe in text, you can show very easily in pictures. You know what I mean? And so that's essentially what you're trying to capture. So you're not trying to dumb it down in the storyboard, but you're trying to capture the same essence in your scenario through the pictures, right? And so you want to, and so that's why you want to be very clear. So sometimes storyboards are a little more challenging because you're trying to take all this information and you're showing it in like 6 to 8 like images, right? And you want that user to go through this and see and understand the same way if they read your 5-page scenario. So no, it's not a dumbed down or simplified version, but you want a more concise version of telling that story.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
You're very welcome. So you want to think about the essential elements of a storyboard: the character, the specific persona involved in your story, their behavior, appearance, expectation, as well as decisions they make along the way are very important. Revealing what's going on in your character's mind is essential to a successful illustration of their experience in the storyboard. And then you want to think about the scene, right? It's an environment that the character finds themselves in a real world context that involves place and people. And then finally, you want to dive into the plot. All too often, designers jump straight into explaining the details of their design without explaining the backstory, right? So it's like, okay, I know we got this character, we got this scene, and then they start using my stuff. And it's like, but wait, why? How did they get there? Like where, you know what I'm saying? How did they get from sitting in their living room to now using your doohickey to climb Mount Everest, right? You got to fill in that blank. You got to help bring me along that journey so I can see it too, right? And we've all watched a movie or read a book that skipped over those details, and you're like, I'm not there with you. Like you dropped me somehow in the story and I'm lost, right? So the same thing, don't lose your users in the story. You want your story to be created with structure in mind. There should be obvious beginning, middle, and end. The narrative that unfolds in your storyboard should focus on a goal of the character. Your plot should stay with a specific trigger and end with either the benefit of the solution or a problem that your character is left with. And try using that same pyramid scheme that we talked about, right? You know, something happening, rise in action, climax, falling action, right? Think about those different pieces or whatever parts of a story context you need, but make sure you're very clear in that that story has to connect from beginning to end. So powerful stories are authentic. The main thing is to make the character, their goal, and what happens to their experience as clear as possible, but they're also simple, right? Your story, like, and if someone who is experiencing this and that can relate to this, they'll see it immediately, right? Like they get the problem because they're living it, right? And so you don't have to do a lot of the unnecessary extras. So one of the things I say with your scenarios and your storyboards, your first pass is a brain dump. Get it all out there, get it all in there. It might be 20 different images, but then you want to go back through and refine and be like, okay, maybe this piece isn't actually needed because it's actually kind of told here, right? Or this is, this is great detail, but I don't want them lost in the weeds, and I really want them to stay focused on, the goal of this story, right? So you want to make sure, no matter how good a sentence or picture or page may be, if it's not adding value to the overall message, you should remove it. And then the emotions. It's essential to communicate the emotional state of your character throughout their experience, right? From the time they enter to this journey to the time they're ending, right? And it's not always a happy ending, right? Think about we represent dead people, right? It's not necessarily a happy ending, but is that customer need being met, and are they satisfied, right? Are they getting that empathy and support that they need to kind of get them, to get resolution for whatever it was that they were seeking? Think about the emotions along that journey, right? And and how, what in terms of them interacting with the alternative, right? Where those frustrations lie and where those happiness, where those moments of happiness or relief might be. So if you want to think about your storyboard in plain text, so take your scenario, and if you were to kind of break down that long scenario into like bullet points, Tom lives alone. He suffers from depression, having lost his job. His friend Susan noticed that something is wrong with Tom. She's not sure how to reach out to him. Susan downloads the app onto her phone and adds Tom. Periodically, the app will remind Susan to check in on Tom. Susan checks in with Tom and lets him know how much she cares about him, right? So that was just kind of the, almost like the taglines, right? That would go under my images, right? So like, if you were to think about this piece, I want a picture, my first picture, to show Tom is living alone and he's suffering from depression, right? After he lost his job, right? The second image, right? Tom's friend Susan noticed that something is wrong. What would you start to think about, what would that picture look like? So each one of these are like the tagline for the images that you want to represent. And so then you add emotions. So Tom living alone, that's a sad emotion. Susan's concerned, that's also a sad emotion. She downloads this app, right? Susan checks in with Tom, knows he's good. She feels happier. She's in a better state of mind, right? So you first think about the pieces, right? So you take your scenarios, your stories, and you kind of think about the bullet points. Like, okay, this paragraph can be summed up with these, with this sentence, right? Or these two sentences, right? This is the emotion that goes with that, right? And so you do that, right? Where you can kind of think about how to, in a more concise way, tell that story and the emotions that go with it. And then you think about it on a scene by scene basis, right? So you translate each step into a storyboard frame, emphasizing the moment and think how your character is feeling about it. And so this is kind of that same story about Tom, right? So Tom lives alone and he's suffering from depression. So we got an image of Tom, and I don't actually know what depression looks like, and that's always kind of debatable, but this, at least, in a more traditional sense, shows you depressed Tom, right? Tom's friend Susan is concerned. So she's talking to someone like, man, I don't know what's going on with Tom. And you draw that in an image, right? You see her downloading the app, right? You see her adding Tom, right? You see all these things that we talked about. Now we see them visually, right? And we can kind of see the emotions from the beginning to the end, right? And so these all basically you're designing a clear outcome. Make sure your storyboard leaves your audience with no doubt about the outcome of the story. If you're describing an unfavorable situation, end with the full weight of the problem. If you're presenting a solution, end with the benefits that the solution to end with the benefits that are of the solution of your character, right? And so all of that has to be clear in your storyboard. And so, like we said, this is kind of the full process of the pipeline. Whew, time is running low. Okay, questions so far? All right, so what we're gonna try to do, we got about almost a little less than 15 minutes, but we're gonna try to take a first tackle of our storyboards. So you can grab a sheet of paper and do stick figures. Storyboard that is another tool that we use that I can pull and demonstrate. But basically, I want you to rapidly and this shouldn't take you more than like a few minutes. And so storyboard that, I'm hesitant to introduce that because sometimes people get lost in pulling the right character. So I want you guys to stick figure it out for me for this first phase. And so I want you guys to take a stab at creating, your first round of your storyboards, right? And this is just a rough patch. You're going to iterate on this before you submit it, but I want you to just kind of take that first stab of what would your storyboard look like. So using your scenarios that you created for your innovation, you will create storyboards. And so we're going to try to do breakout rooms. Katie, should we try to do breakout rooms or leave it alone?
I think given the amount of time, we leave it alone and just have people
Okay.
work on it all in here.
Yeah, just work on it in here, and that way we can support each other. Don't worry about storyboard that right now. I can demonstrate that at the end of class, and you could definitely use it to submit your final version if you want. You can use PowerPoint, or again, you can take a picture of your stick figure drawing. We sent you guys crayons and construction paper. Feel free to get creative, and sometimes that really helps get your creative juice going. But I want to see you tell your story. So think about it from the perspective of, what I want kind of in a frame by frame scenario, and just kind of, draw it out. So you have your scenarios that you created on our last breakout room. So take those scenarios and create some quick storyboards out of them. So I want you guys to take, let's see, maybe about 5 to 7 minutes, we'll see, so we could at least do a show and tell of a few of them before we break out.
Dr. Eugene, I had a question.
Sure.
So like on the portal for this week's assignment, there's like a mark complete button. So there's not like a way to submit it. So just wanted to.
Yeah,
Wow.
we'll update that. We made some last minute changes to the assignments for the
Okay.
simple fact we didn't realize the whole Monday wouldn't be a class thing, so we had to like cram stuff in today. So that'll be updated.
Okay, cool.
I'm stuck right off the bat. Is that okay?
Talk to me. What you stuck on?
I can't. I'm like, I want to draw a messy house. I can't even think of how to draw. I got a stick person with a sad face.
You said you don't know how to. You don't want to draw a stick person with a sad face.
No, I have a stick person with a sad face, and I want to draw a messy house. I'm like, I can't. So I go, okay, go inside the house, draw.
Clothes on the floor and a stack of something.
But how do you draw that? I'm like laughing, going, that's what I thought, a couch. Let me draw a couch with laundry piled all over it. But
Just make a little mountain of squigglies that look like
Kate laundry. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my God, look, who's doing that? Is that you?
squiggle laundry.
It's implied that she's inside her house. Yeah, I am no artist. We're the same.
She's in a messy house and she's sad.
There it is. There it is. I can see it in my mind's eye. Like, I so appreciate artists. My kid's an artist, right? How I could see a laundry basket full of, but how do you draw that? That's funny. Hmm. I drew an Amazon box with a smile on it. There's a smile in there.
Anybody ready to share? It doesn't have to be complete. We just want to see what you got so far. Anybody?
I have one, but it's kind of bad. My drawing is bad.
We're not expecting great. Go ahead.
Okay, so let me take away this background. Otherwise, I cannot show you. Okay, so I did a 4-quadrant drawing. So in the first one, I didn't give this person a name, but the stick figure man has 3 different places he goes for his healthcare. He goes to his primary care, a chiropractor, and his eye doctor. So he decides that he needs a new doctor. He needs a new primary care physician. And so when he gets there, he's handed an intake form and paperwork to do. And when he looks at the paperwork, it asks him what his past medical history is, his allergies, and medications that he's taking. So with my app, he opens it up on his phone and he's able to easily write it down on the piece of paper. And then I was going to do another version of it that was before the app, and it would show him being like, I don't know. I think it starts with an A, but I'm not sure.
No, that's perfect.
Yep.
That's perfect.
Good job,
You did the
Marsha.
after, you can show the before. That's great. That's really good. All righty. Anybody else want to show theirs? Anybody? It doesn't have to be complete or it doesn't have to be perfect. Just want to see what you got. Go ahead, Lisa. And then Chris, you're next because I see you already.
Were you ready, Chris? I don't know if I can say it as well as she did, but I have my gal in her house and it's a mess. And then dad dies, funeral. And then mom's house, I can't bring mom here, it's too messy. And then mom is at her house saying, what am I going to do with all this stuff? Like golf clubs and a little suit.
That's awesome.
Right. Okay.
That tells a very good intro to your story in a couple of pictures. I think that's really good. All right, Chris. Were you ready for us?
Well, I only have one panel. I don't have as many.
Okay,
as
let's just do that.
Okay, well, so far I just have this. It's somebody that wants to be famous. So far he's looking at his phone or on the TV and thinking to himself that he wants to be I guess on a stage somewhere.
Okay. I think that does
That's
a
all I
good
have.
job of setting the scene, right? He's at home, so his thoughts, right? A lot of that would have been a lot of text to describe, but you showed in one frame kind of what his goals, his motive. You showed who he was, right? You showed his goals and motivations of where he was trying to go to, right? And so you showed a lot in that first frame. So good start.
Thank you.
All right, before I end, I want to come to Dell because I have high expectations for you, Dell.
You're so, I love it. Thank you. Well, I didn't know. So drawing quickly is not really my strong suit. It takes me time and I'm a perfectionist. I don't even really want to show it. If we could be
I know
honest.
you are. That's why I'm putting you in the spotlight.
I'm not even done yet. But all right, well, I'll just show you something real quick. It's just turning a book into an audio book. Right now we have one individual reading the book. Of course, he is unsatisfied with just reading the book. He wants it to be more immersive. So he takes an audio tape to the book and now he's smiling.
All right, that's a good start. See? Y'all gonna learn to let go of stuff. My perfectionist. Woo,
You
y'all
got a
make-
sketchbook there. So yeah, good job.
You
Thank
made
you.
that quick. That looks really good.
Thank you.
That is awesome. All right, so I just want to show you guys one thing. I think what you guys have is a great start, and you finish those panels and like screenshot that and upload it. That is exactly what we're looking for. I offer this as an alternative because I've had entrepreneurs that were so crippled that they absolutely could not stand their own drawing. They would not release it unless I gave them an alternative. So we had to go hunting for an alternative because that was the only way people would participate in this process. And so one of the things that we've used in the past is called Storyboard That. And some people find it frustrating, some people find it useful. Again, it's not mandatory. Again, I think what you have is a shorter and faster way to getting it done. But if you're especially thinking about, okay, I want to take the storyboard and ask a couple people and I just don't feel like my drawings are getting there, Storyboard That is kind of a free app. It's a 14-day trial. Or I think it's free, but it's like you're limited into how you can export it. So you just click on create storyboard, and then it'll bring you here, and you can, everything's drag and drop. So you think about the scenario. So I think someone used a scenario of someone in their home. So you can do home indoor, and it'll show you a couple of different scenarios of indoor home. So you kind of drag that, and then you can do a frame by frame, and it has guidance. So like you can kind of, I think it might be limited in how many frames you can add. So just kind of play around with it and see if it works for you. Again, not mandatory, just an option, but you can kind of add a lot of different pieces, and it has some guidance in terms of, what to think about next. So you can add some characters, and you can, and again, it is very limited. So it's
Click
really
on items. It said items on that last screen. Items. So I could put all kinds of items, pick a living room and drop all kinds of food and cups and items. Okay, I like that.
Yeah, you can do houses, you can do furniture, you can just throw, again, it is pretty limited, but it's very intentional in terms of using it for a storyboard. You don't want all the bells and whistles because people get lost in details, and that's not what you want at this stage. So if you can, stick to your stick figures. If you feel like you absolutely cannot function with your stick figures, this is an alternative, but I highly recommend keeping it as basic as possible. So this will be, like I said, the homework assignment will be updated. I'm going to make sure I get all the updated materials to Katie so she can have that in there for you. In the meantime, you have 2 deliverables between now and when we reconvene on Wednesday. So it is going to be your scenarios, and that so your scenarios you guys can keep, but I want to see that customer journey map. And so it's the scenarios kind of broken down into the stages, right? So that's what I want to see from you. And then I want to see your storyboards, right? Keep it simple, keep it concise, keep it straightforward, but I should be able to see that natural transition from your customer journey map to these storyboards, and it should be very clear. If you have questions, Katie is always available. Schedule a chat with her if you're really jammed, or shoot her a message and she'll support you. Other than that, that is all I have. I hope you all have a great rest of your week, a safe Juneteenth, and we will see you Wednesday. Katie has something.
I will say, I want everyone to at least try it and figure out where they're stuck before they contact me.
Yes.
Please don't just say you're stuck. Just give it a try and play with it for a while.
Yes, please do not come to Katie with a blank slate on I'm stuck and that's it. Like, we want to see your effort, your tries. We've done a lot. We try to do a lot of hand holding early on, but now we want you guys that you have enough tools and you have enough comfortability in working with these tools to really start kind of taking some of these steps on your own. And so we don't want you to stay stuck when you get stuck, but we want to know that you have at least tried before you reach out to us. So please take that effort. Other housekeeping from Katie or questions from anyone else? All righty. All right, well, you guys have a good rest of your evening, and we will see you on Wednesday. We're going to use the rest of the stuff in just a precursor. On Wednesday, we're going to use the rest of the things in our design kits. Today we're doing storyboards. Now, if you feel good on your storyboards that you submit and Katie says excellent job, or your scenarios, definitely take those scenarios or storyboards to potential customers and get their feedback. Like, you want every chance you get to get feedback, please do so. And you can do great things with stick figures and getting people's feedback. Don't think because you're not an artist, you can't get feedback. Don't try to like make it great, right? Just take exactly what you have and ask customers. So between now and Wednesday, you could take that storyboard and ask some customers, you know, how can they see themselves in these stories and can they relate to your storyboard? You're doing yourself a great service. So make sure, if you can, get those storyboards in to get that feedback so you can start testing the waters with them as quickly as possible. Because when we get together on Wednesday, we're going to start building paper prototypes. And so we want to go to that next level of prototypes where you're building something that's a little more functional. And then you want to take that around to people, right? So between now and Wednesday, you could take it around to say 4 or 5 people or however many you, even if it's 2 or 3, I just want you to take your storyboards and get some feedback from someone other than yourself. Please, please, please always remember to use the people in this class, because a lot of you are each other's customers. So don't take advantage of that. Like, don't miss the opportunity of getting feedback from, what is it, like 9 or 10 people in this class? That's 9 or 10 people you can get feedback from, right? And so there's no reason that when we meet with you on Wednesday, no one but Katie has seen your storyboard, right? Like that should not be the situation. So please take advantage of that so we can take that feedback and build it into the next iteration.
And we will be going all the way till 9 o'clock because it'll be a holiday week next Wednesday, right, Wanda?
Yeah.
Just heads up for everyone there.
So I know it feels a little long, but we're trying to jam a lot of stuff in these holidays. We're trying to make sure we're getting you guys there. So we're gonna wrap up our design thinking on next Wednesday. So it's going to be, but it'll be fun because we'll be building our prototypes. So it won't feel like you're sitting here listening to me lecture as much as you did tonight in the last session. So we're getting you there. Questions, concerns, cries of outrage?
I
Awesome.
feel good. I have a
All right.
little side question for Katie. Can I'll take this opportunity real quick?
All right, but let me let everybody else go on their merrily way. So you rest of y'all have a good night. And Lisa, stay on task. Katie, your question.
Thank you. And just real quick, one of the messages, Katie, was about my board from when we first did the Miro